My name is Simone Vale. I'm 40 years old, and for 15 years I've worked as a certified genetic counselor. Which means when a lab result comes back ambiguous enough to change who inherits what, I'm the person courts and families call to explain, plainly, what the numbers actually say. 2 weeks before my uncle's estate closed, my cousin handed me a folder across her kitchen table and asked me to read one page of it the simple way. What she didn't know was that I'd already seen the real version of that page, 6 weeks earlier, in a place she never expected me to look. Welcome back to MJ Drama Stories, where every story starts with silence and ends with power. If you've ever been asked to simplify a truth that was never actually simple, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. I've spent 15 years interpreting genetic test results, the last 9 of them specializing in probate and inheritance cases, the technical, careful work of explaining paternity and kinship results to families, attorneys, and courts in language precise enough to survive a challenge. My job is translation with consequences attached. A single percentage point, read correctly or carelessly, can decide whether someone inherits a house or nothing at all. I don't get to round numbers to make people comfortable. I've delivered results that ended engagements and results that reunited people who'd spent decades apart. Either way, my job is the same. Read exactly what the report says, not what anyone in the room needs it to say. My quirk, if you want to call it that, is that I can't read any percentage, a weather forecast, a battery indicator, a poll result, without automatically converting it into confidence intervals in my head, the way other people hum a song stuck in their skull. My husband Owen calls it doing the math face and knows to just wait it out. It's a small, mostly useless habit. It had never once, in 15 years, mattered outside a lab report. It was about to be the only reason a stranger I'd never met didn't get quietly written out of a family that owed him more than any of them wanted to admit. I grew up close to my cousin Renata, closer than most cousins, practically raised as sisters after my own mother died when I was 9, and Renata's mother, my Aunt Delphine, helped raise me alongside her. Our uncle, Walter Vale, my father's older brother, never married, never had children anyone in the family knew about, and had spent his retirement quietly wealthy from a modest but well-timed run of rental properties nobody talked about at dinner, because talking about money wasn't something Vales did. When Walter died in March, at 79% of a stroke in his sleep, just over $1.1 million after the properties sold, was set to divide, per his decades-old will, equally among his nieces and nephews. 5 of us, or so everyone believed, until a man named Dorian Ames contacted the estate attorney in April, claiming to be Walter's biological son. The message came on a Thursday evening from Renata, warm and practical the way important things in my family always arrive dressed. "Simone, can you come by Sunday? Got the DNA results back on that Dorian situation and honestly it's a mess. The report is confusing and the attorney wants a family read before we respond. You're the only one who actually understands this stuff. Can you just help us read it the simple way? Read it the simple way." I'd hear some version of that sentence twice more before that Sunday was through. It had never once, until that Thursday, made the back of my neck go cold. Here's the backstory, because none of what happened at Renata's kitchen table makes sense without it. Dorian Ames was 43, a contractor from 2 states over, who'd grown up believing his biological father was a man who'd died before he was born. A DNA ancestry test, taken on a whim the previous Christmas, had flagged an unexpected close family match to our cousin Marcus's teenage daughter, which had eventually, after a cascade of confused messages nobody in the family enjoyed retelling, traced back to Walter. Dorian hadn't come forward asking for money. He'd come forward, according to his first letter to the estate attorney, mostly wanting to know whether the man who might be his father had ever known he existed. The estate, given the timing, had ordered a formal paternity analysis using preserved medical tissue from Walter's final hospitalization, compared against Dorian's submitted sample, to settle the question with legal certainty before the will's equal division proceeded. I want to be honest about the part of this that isn't noble, because if I only tell you the principled version, you won't understand why I drove to Renata's that Sunday, instead of asking the attorney to send the report directly to me and my office properly on the record. Renata had been the one who sat with me through every difficult year after my mother died, every holiday, every school event my own father was too shattered to attend. Some part of me, the part that still remembers being 9 years old at her kitchen table doing homework, because it was easier than being alone, wanted so badly to just once be useful to her the way she'd been useful to me, without turning it into a professional boundary I had to enforce against someone I loved. I understood walking into that kitchen that I might be about to fail both her and a man I'd never met, and I didn't yet know which failure I could live with less. I told Owen about the second text over dinner, and he set his fork down with the specific stillness he uses right before saying something I don't want to hear. "Read it the simple way isn't a request for your expertise," he said. "It's someone telling you the answer they need before they've shown you the question." I told him it was probably just Renata being overwhelmed, nothing more sinister than that. He looked at me the way you look at someone about to walk calmly into a decision they already suspect isn't what it seems. "Simone, you've spent 15 years telling families that a paternity result doesn't come in a simple version. Why would this family be the one exception?" I went anyway. "Some doors you keep walking back through even after you've learned exactly what's usually behind them, because the person on the other side raised you through the hardest years of your life, and you don't stop owing that just because a folder's involved. Stay with me here, because what I found at Renata's table over the next 2 hours, I ended up assembling the way I assemble every case that crosses my desk, one inconsistency at a time, until the inconsistencies stop being separate and start being a shape." I arrived at Renata's Sunday afternoon expecting a quiet conversation between the two of us. Instead, I counted 3 other cars in the driveway. Marcus, our cousin Priya, and Aunt Delphine, all gathered around the kitchen island already, a printed copy of something face down on the table like a hand nobody wanted to reveal first. On the counter sat a bottle of wine I recognized as expensive, uncorked, next to a stack of Walter's old bank statements still in their original manila envelope, rubber band gone brittle and snapped. The kind of envelope that had clearly sat untouched in a drawer for years, until someone very recently needed it again. Renata hugged me a beat too long. The way people hug when they're rehearsing being fine. "You're just in time," she said. "The attorney's report came in Friday, and honestly, Simone, it reads like a foreign language to the rest of us. We just need you to walk us through it plainly. You always know how to make this stuff make sense." Marcus clapped my shoulder, too hard, too friendly. "Good thing we've got a real scientist in the family," he said, grinning. "He's never once used my actual title in the 20 years I've known him. Flatten the job down to a scientist, and the woman doing it stays small enough to manage. Stay with me here, because what happened over the next 90 minutes, I ended up piecing together the way I piece together every case, one document at a time, until the room stopped being about a folder and started being about what everyone had already decided to do with it." Priya leaned toward me while Renata poured coffee and said, not quietly, "We just want this handled cleanly, you know, before it turns into some whole legal thing that drags out for years." I said I wasn't sure what she meant by handled. She just smiled the smile of a woman who knows exactly what she means and enjoys not explaining it. Around 3, while the others argued lightly about whether to order lunch, I stepped into Renata's home office to take a work call I couldn't push off, and past her desk, where a second folder sat open, not the attorney's official report, which was still face down on the kitchen table, but a printed email chain between Renata and a private lab, dated 6 weeks earlier, well before the estate attorney had ever ordered the formal analysis. The subject line read, "Ames Preliminary, Confidential." The body, 3 lines long, confirmed what the family had apparently already known privately, weeks before Dorian's name was ever spoken aloud at that kitchen table, a 99.7% probability of paternity, run quietly, off the record, before anyone told the estate attorney it needed to happen at all. I stood there in Renata's office and read it twice, because that's what I do when a document tells me something my life hasn't caught up to yet. This wasn't confusion about a confusing report. This was a family that had already known the answer for over a month, and had spent that month deciding quietly what to do about it before ever letting the real answer reach the people it legally belonged to. I didn't confront anyone in that office. I did the only thing 15 years of training has ever taught my hands to do on instinct. I photographed the email exactly where it sat, folder untouched, and walked back to the kitchen holding nothing but my own phone, smiling the smile you smile when you've just found out the family you're about to help simply already read the real version a month ago and didn't like the answer. 20 minutes later, back at the table, Renata caught Marcus's eye and gave him a small encouraging nod, the second delivery, though I wouldn't clock it as such until later that evening. "Simone's the only one who can really walk us through this properly," she told Delphine, squeezing my hand across the table. "She'll help us read it the simple way." I smiled back. I did not mention the office. Not yet. By 4, the official report was finally turned face up on the table, and Marcus slid it toward me with the practiced ease of a man closing a family decision instead of opening a conversation. "We just need you to confirm what it actually says," he said. So we can send the attorney a clean family response tomorrow. No drama, no dragging it out. Just the simple version. Renata reached across and squeezed my hand again, warmer this time, almost pleading. Read it the simple way, Simone. Please. For all of us. I let the silence sit. 5 full seconds, maybe 6. Long enough that I heard the dishwasher cycling in the next room. Long enough that Marcus's hand went still on the table. Long enough that Renata's smile started to work at holding itself in place. You already knew? I said. Renata's face did the thing faces do when a sentence doesn't parse the way they'd planned for it to. What? Knew what, Simone? We just got this Friday. You didn't, I said. And I said it gently. Because I loved her. And gently didn't make it less true. I found an email in your office 20 minutes ago from a private lab. Dated 6 weeks ago. Confirming a 99.7% probability of paternity. You ran your own test before the estate attorney ever ordered the official one you've known for over a month. I turned my phone around, not toward Renata first, but toward Aunt Delphine, because she was the one who most deserved to see it clearly. That second run at it, reaching for the phone the way you reach for something you could still, somehow, argue back into a folder. That was preliminary, informal. It doesn't even count. We just wanted to know before we... Before you what? I asked, quietly, evenly. Before you decided how to present it to an attorney who has a legal obligation to treat every heir equally the moment paternity is established. This isn't a reading comprehension problem. There's no simple version of this that isn't the true one. Priya tried a third angle, pivoting the way people always pivot, from demand to injury. Do you understand what you're doing to this family right now? Over a stranger? And I said the sentence I'd been building, without knowing it for 15 years. Calm. Not loud. I didn't owe her loud. You asked me to read a report the simple way in front of everyone, when you'd already privately confirmed the real answer 6 weeks ago and sat on it. I'm not helping you present a version of this. I never was going to, once I understood what this actually was. The private lab email. Once I shared what I'd found with the estate attorney. A legal obligation I didn't take lightly, but one that overrode the family loyalty I'd walked in with, meant the family's month of quiet deliberation became part of the formal record, rather than staying buried in a home office folder. It didn't change the paternity result itself. The official analysis, completed independently days later, confirmed the same 99.7% figure the private test had already found. What it changed was the family's credibility with the attorney handling an estate already sensitive enough, without an added question of concealment. Renata, Marcus, and Priya each had to submit sworn statements accounting for the 6-week gap between their private knowledge and their formal disclosure. A process none of them enjoyed, and none of them I think will forget. I want to be fair to Renata, because she wasn't a cartoon villain in this, and I think that matters more than the tidy version of this story would want it to. She told me later, crying at that same kitchen table, that the 6 weeks hadn't been about greed exactly, it had been about grief. A scrambling, panicked month of trying to protect the shape of the only version of Walter's family she'd ever known, before a stranger's DNA test forced her to accept that shape had never been complete to begin with. I believed her. It didn't undo the 6 weeks. But I believed her. The estate ultimately divided 6 ways instead of 5, Dorian Ames receiving his equal share alongside cousins who'd known him for exactly one difficult spring instead of a lifetime. He used part of it, I later learned from a card he sent me, to frame the one photograph anyone in the family could find of Walter as a young man, the closest thing, he wrote, to finally seeing his own face, reflected back at him from somewhere. I know the truth cost your family something, the card read. I hope it's alright to say it gave me something too. Thank you for being the one person in this who didn't try to talk me out of existing. I read that card twice the way I read reports that finally reconcile something. It did more for me honestly than the attorney's formal closure letter ever could. Here's what 15 years of reading other people's DNA finally taught me about my own family. Being trusted to explain the truth simply isn't the same as being trusted to soften it. One is a function. The other is a choice, made in the open, where a person's actual place in a family gets decided by what's real, not by who got to the lab first and decided quietly how long the rest of us could go without knowing. That's my story. If it meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe to MJ Drama Stories, because there's another one waiting for you next week.